let us move on to Braavos, where, I don't know, it was funny because, within that 1 week of Game of Thrones airing, you mentioned the fact that no one really bought that Arya was going to die. And then there was all these theories because, frankly, none of us liked or bought into as a character. It seemed a flaw in the writing that she was so caught unaware, right? Which led to a million theories about like, oh, she knew it, so it was like stage blood, which that was a stretch because she would have to have known she was going to go for the gut.
Right.
Then there was all these things about like,
split personality.
The split personality Matt Fowler called the Fight Club idea,
Which I actually did love that.
Right,
idea.
right. And then there was like Jaqen was, am I always no,
yeah,
am I
Jaqen
saying his
and
name?
Arya, yeah.
The Jaqen was like maybe it was him, not the way. Like there was so many different ways people were thinking it played out. He was Arya because he was testing the waif.
Right.
No.
Arya
was caught up.
I did this interview with the director, and I asked him about that scene because he did the two, and he said, it's a little bit open to interpretation, but the way he interpreted it was Arya did let her guard down in this moment, with, looking out at the view and ready to go home. She's made this decision, and then in that moment, it is a mistake and a nearly fatal one that the wave kills her, which I think was everyone's like least favorite version of that story. And also, as this episode was playing out, I kept waiting for there to be another full, like there were sort of these lingering shots on Lady Crane. I kept waiting for her to be a faceless, like her to take off her face and it be Jaqen, or this was all part of a test that Arya had to take, and maybe the waif was failing her test or something. But no, just pretty straightforward.
Yeah, like I thought when Jaqen even told the waif to kill her that there was some extra level to it happening.
Because he said, do it painlessly, and she's like, I'm just gonna keep making that psycho noise.
Right. So it was what you see is what you get, which I think that was disappointing, mostly because it just seemed very out of character for Arya to be at this point be caught unawares. Also, I think ultimately it leads to a frustration here that this was pretty much almost 2 full seasons in Braavos. And I don't know, I definitely know that I don't think this was worth 2 full seasons. I mean, when all is said and done, we assume Arya will come out of this. She's more skilled, clearly she can fight in the dark. She probably has other skills she might be able to, whip out at some point. But she already went in, she's pretty badass. She had a pretty big body count. So for them to spend that much time on what could have been a couple episodes, and we're going to talk next about a storyline that was only 2 episodes yet. We're not really sure why they did it. I get why they did this in sort of a bigger sense, but it just felt like, why that much time?
Well, it's interesting because the Arya who came to Braavos was very confident and very cocky and very sure that this was her mission, this was her journey. She comes in, she's like, make me a faceless man. She had to be humbled. And that was a lot of last season. I get that she went through that, but the fact that she was so foolish still as to make that mistake last episode really makes me question how much she did learn. Yes, because she was blind, she can now fight in the dark. But she was so grievously injured, and she still managed to come out, and she decided, no, I'm going to be Arya Stark. I'm going to go home. That's great, but I agree with you. Like, I think part of the reasons it had to be 2 seasons is because we crossed this threshold where we went from the show catching up to the books, and I think honestly the reason they ended so many storylines where they did at the end of A Dance with Dragons is to buy George 1 extra year. I think pretty much everyone expected he would get Winds out before season 6, including him, and he didn't. And so now there's just this different sense of pacing where they're like, okay, we're doing it. We're going into unknown territory, and we got to do it at our own pace now. We can't try and slow down for the books anymore. And I think that's why things are happening. I think if maybe they had reached that point at the beginning of season 5, the Braavos storyline wouldn't have been as expanded as it is.
Yeah, because actually I think it was Alan Sepinwall I was reading last night said something that I was like, in retrospect, it's like it almost feels like this should have been off camera like Bran, like she reaches there, maybe we see her start her training, and then a year and a half later she comes back. Now, reasonably, it's like Arya's too popular a character to keep off camera that long, whatnot.
But she lost some of her popularity.
But that's the thing; it did because it started to drag so much, and because it's like no one was rooting for, nor did we really believe the storyline would end with her being like, "Yep, I'm no one. Forget Arya Stark, and that's it." Right? And so that's why it's like, yeah, you could have done a much more condensed version of this storyline, I felt, and that's why it's kind of frustrating when it's all said and done. And I think that's why we were extra frustrated that it even had like a very what you see is what you get with the way it all happened.
I will tell you that for all the Faceless Men storyline, what isn't my favorite part of this season, I love Lady Crane. I love what Essie Davis did with that character. I thought it was really impactful, Arya watching the show and sort of the development, even seeing, the payoff of her advice of Lady Crane.
She took her notes.
I know, of Lady Crane playing an angry Cersei and sort of the juxtaposition of that with actual Cersei. Like, I loved everything about that, and as much as it did feel like we saw a softer Arya with Lady Crane, I liked that side of Arya we saw, and also her acknowledgement of like, what's west of Westeros? No one knows. I want to know.
Right.
I almost wrote an article about it, and I was like, no, like we don't know.
It's like the Catalina of Westeros.
Yeah, it's the Catalina.
People
it's
chilling
like
on an
the,
island.
the vacation spot of Westeros that only a select few people know about. I wonder if Arya is going to end with sort of a Grey Haven's Lord of the Rings moment, and like at the end of the story, once everything is done, we are going to see her sail off to the west and go and find something and never hear from her again. I think I could see that being a bittersweet, but almost like nice ending for that character who's been through so much, and really, as much as she's going home, doesn't have too much.
Right. It also, I have to say, it felt, like a stretch, to say the least, that she was running at all, given the injury she had just had, it just...
I thought they did an okay job of doing that.
Okay job, but I felt like it should have been much more of a burden to her until she fell down all the stairs. And by the way, people in Braavos suck.
I know, they're the worst.
They do not stop for anything. Like, they saw a girl tumble down like 25 steps, and they're just like, our origins.
I will say, like, we've teased this show so much for its jumps in logic that it's done, especially, and it's funny, I did an interview also this week with Nikolai Coster-Waldau, who plays Jaime, and he even sort of joked about like the speed ravens in Westeros that managed to like get news all over so quickly. With Arya, I did buy it because I think, number one, she'd had the milk of the poppy. She'd just come and woken up after like being bound. I could see her having just that briefest period of time before the pain sets back in. And also that burst of adrenaline of, oh, I'm going to die if I don't run. I think her initial running before she rolled down the stairs, but also sort of hit a wall that we saw, was small enough that I bought that as her being able to escape in the way that she did.
I should say, so it's not like I'm only complaining. The two things I will say, though, I liked here, though, was I liked the waifs T-1000-esque, you know what I mean? I really liked when she came up on the side there, kind of quietly. It was cool. Like, that was all really well done. And we're gonna, I think we're both gonna complain, I know I am, about something else that happened off camera in a minute, but I thought that the fight happening off camera worked, her cutting the candle. You still got if you were looking for something visceral, you got the waif's face. So
I thought that payoff.
We didn't need to see that fight, even though I would have still been, cheering if Arya got to hit her with a stick a few times after all. So I thought that worked, even though I felt like maybe she should have been a little more wounded while running. The chase itself was exciting, and the off-camera way she got rid of the waif.
Could Jaqen end up being like any lamer by the end, though? Like, he was such a cool character, and then at the end, like, he was just sort of like a pussycat at the where he didn't know that she came in. Like, she was pretty wounded. How did she sneak in there? And everything that happened, and then even I think he was proud. I think that was the outcome he wanted, but even his like, now you're no one. He's been one step ahead of Arya this entire time. He can't actually think that, her killing the waif in that way and everything she did would lead to her being no one. Of course she's Arya Stark.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. Jaqen was a character I was so excited to have come back and thought was so interesting. And I'm not convinced that that's the last we'll see of him, though I think if that is the end of his storyline, it is a perfectly satisfying end. But I just thought he sort of like started with a bang and ended with a puff for me.
Yeah, and then overall, more to me, it's just like, and you might be very right as far as like if the books had been out, it might have played out differently on the show pacing wise. But when you look now that we spent, 2 years in Braavos,
for questionable amounts of character development.
Questionable amount of character development. Yeah.